Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Our section today is 1.6. It is about solving other types of equations. So since we are talking about other types, this means that we have already studied some types. Do you remember what are the types that we have studied so far? Linear equation. Linear is easier. Quadratic. What else? P8. Do you remember what we have studied in P8? Power equation. When you have type of power equation, basic equations are studied in P8. Linear, power, even when you have radical there. Yes. When you have also rational equations, when you multiply both sides by the LCD. Yes. And the quadratic equation, we have studied this topic in 1.4. So today we will study more types like polynomial equations. Polynomial, by the way, linear is also polynomial equation because it is a polynomial of degree 1. Quadratic, it is a polynomial equation, but it is of degree 2. So we will study more now degrees of degree 3, of degree 4, and so on. Also, we will study more equations that involve radicals. And finally, equations of quadratic type. We will see together what we mean by that. Before, let's start with this easy example. How to solve this equation? X to the power 5 equals to 9x to the power 3. X to the power 5 equals to 9x to the power 3. You are suggesting to move what to the right hand side? What about dividing? I hear someone say dividing both sides by what? By x to the power 3. So let's see what will happen. This will be x to the power what? 2 equals to what? 9, which means if you take the square root of both sides, it will be x, the absolute value of x equals to 3, which means that x is positive or negative 3.
But there's a solution that's been seen or been removed.
So this is one way, but this way it is not a right way to solve such equation. So in fact, I heard at the beginning someone said, let's add negative 9x to the power 3 to both sides, which means eliminate the right hand side. So this is the right step is this. To do this, x to the power 5 minus 9x to the power 3 equals to 0. Look, if this is happening, what we will get? Let's keep this in mind, Shabab. How many solutions we obtained from this? We have 2 solutions. Let's see if we now, how to solve now this equation. Look at this. We will take x to the power 3 as a common factor. So it is not dividing both sides by x to the power 3. It is x squared minus 9 equals to 0. Now,
The product is 0 product.
you need to factor now. It is difference of squares plus 3 equals to 0. Now we have 3 factors. The product of them is 0. This means that the first factor is 0, or the second factor is 0, or the last factor is 0, which means that x is negative 3. Look how many solutions we have here. So here we have 3 solutions. And whether here we have to, so we lost here one of what? One of the solutions. Why we lost it? Because we did a mistake. We divided both sides by x, whether when x is 0. X here, x equals 0 is a solution for this equation. So indeed, what we did here, we divided by 0 in this step. So what is the lesson that we have learned from this example? Never, ever divide by a variable that it might be 0, unless you are sure it is not 0, because some variables, they are never ever can be 0. Or to be more accurate, they are not solution, even if they are 0, but the 0 is not a solution. So x is equal to 0 is not a possible solution for this. Yes?
How about if I divide it on x squared? That means the x could be 0. So
yes,
I
the
add
same.
The 0 to solution of x equal to plus or negative.
You cannot divide by x equals 0 here. By
Yes,
x,
so
by
I
x, by x squared, by x to the power 3, by any x to the power, any power.
I mean, if I should divide the both sides of x, I can put the x is equal to 0 as a solution.
You are looking for x. You are looking what is the values of x that make this equation true. So you are seeing here that only the equations that make this equation true are 3 and negative 3. But indeed, 0 also is a solution. Look, when you put x equals to 0, you will get 0 equals to 9 multiplied by 0, so it is 0. So there is a missing solution that you lost because you divide by the factor that contains 0. Yes?
We can't say 0 is always an answer.
No, no, it depends on the equation that we are talking about. So no, it is not a solution for any equation, no. Okay, so to avoid such mistake, Shabab, I put this warning for you here. Never divide both sides of any equation by expression that contain the variable, and this variable could be 0, this expression, unless you are sure that it is not 0, or to be more accurate, it is not a solution for this equation. Now we have another polynomial equation. How to solve? The concept is the same concept. What we did here when we solved this one. What was the concept? The factoring. So the concept here is to do factoring. Can we factor here by common factor? It is useless. What is the benefit of that? Now, if this is 0, if we don't have this, yes, you are right. Take x as a common factor. But with this, what will be the benefit of taking x as a common factor? This is so it is a repeated mistake, Shabab. When you have x squared minus 6x plus 8, for example, equal to 0. When you take x here as a common factor, it is true but useless. So what? What you will do after that? You cannot do anything here. So if I give you equation like this, you should write it like this and then factor as a trinomial. So don't factor here by common factor unless there is 8. There is no 8 here. So if it is like this, you are right. If it is like this, take x as a common factor. Now this will be 0, or this will be 0, and x will be 6 in this case. Okay. So how to factor this? By grouping. It is by grouping. So you need to divide these 4 terms to 2 groups, and of course here you will take -4 as a common factor, and here x. No need for this step, by the way. You can just do it directly like this. Now the new common factor between these 2 groups is x plus 3. Factor it out. X squared minus 4. It is a difference of squares. Factor it. You will get x minus 2 times x plus 2. Now 3 factors equals to 0. Then by the 0 factor property, or by the 0 product property, we have x is 2 or -2 or -3. Usually they will ask you about the number of solutions, the sum of the solutions, the product of solutions. It is better to check when you have a polynomial equation. Now let's see how to solve equation that involve fractional expression. We have seen this before in P8. What we call it there, what? Rational equation. So how to solve rational equations? Multiply both sides by the LCD. How to find the LCD? Factor each denominator, and then the LCD will be the product of the distinct factors with the highest power. Great. So now to factor here, this is already factored. X, this is x minus 3 ready. X squared minus 9, it is x minus 3 times x plus 3. Now the LCD is x times x minus 3 times x plus. So we will multiply now both sides by this LCD. Here it is. This is the LCD. Of course, under one condition here. And there are 3 conditions indeed. X is not 0, not 3, not -3, because these are the zeros of the denominator. Also here, we are multiplying by number. If x is 0, we are multiplying both sides by 0. For the same reason that we did in the first example, if you remember. So this means that these cannot be solutions, never ever can be solutions. But for the first equation, x equal to 0, it can be a solution. Now, what we will do, we will multiply this LCD by each term here. So what you will do, when you multiply the LCD by the first term, x will be cancelled with what? X. And what is remaining? 3 multiplied by what? By x squared minus 9. Here it is. Then if you multiply now the LCD by the second term, now this one by this term, This will be cancelled with this, and you will get x multiplied by x plus 3. Here, this will be cancelled with this, and you will have negative 12. Of course, this cancellation now is valid because x is not 0, not 3, not negative 3. And we just not putting these equations to just want the solution to be true. No, we in fact starting from the beginning. X from the beginning cannot be 0, cannot be 3, cannot be negative 3. Now we don't have any denominators. It is so easy now.
Simplifying and
Expand the left hand side. Take what?
The common factor, x plus 3.
You need to expand. You have to expand here the left hand side. How can you do it without expanding?
I will just take off the x minus 3 to give the x plus 3 in the brackets, so you can start to explain this.
It's okay, no problem. Now, what you need here to do, just expand this expression here. If you even keep it like this and take it as a common factor, you need to expand again because you have here a term that is not included. So now combine like terms, you have 3x squared minus 2x squared, which is x squared, and negative 6x, negative 27 equals to negative 12x. Now add 12x for both sides. You will get this. What is this?
trinomial.
This is,
Polynomial.
this is, what is the type of this equation?
Quadratic.
Quadratic. Quadratic equation. How to solve quadratic equations? By factoring. Try factoring. If you cannot factor it, use the quadratic formula. But this is easy to be factored. What is it? X plus 9 times x minus 3. So by the zero factor property, you have two factors. The product of them is 0. So the first one is 0 or the second one, or 0 or both are 0. So this means that x is 3 or x is negative 9. Usually they ask you about the sum of the solutions, the number of solutions, the product of solutions. So if they ask about the number of solutions and you say 2, you will be wrong. It will be it will be false. So in fact, the first one is rejected. You should reject this solution because we have bought a condition here and it was clear. Even if you forget, ya shabab, go back and check. It is better always to check. So when you want to check that the left hand side equals to the right hand side, you will put x equals to 3 here, and you will have a 0 in the denominator and define. So here we have only one solution, x equals to negative 9. You can check.
If you ask me about the sum of the solution, I can't say.
Negative 9. You have only one solution. So the sum is negative 9. The product is negative 9. The number of solutions is only one solution.
Even if there was a square root, the number inside it cannot be negative.
I didn't get your point, but it is better to check. If you have such case like that, go and check.
So it wasn't considered as a solution.
Of course, if we have a negative here, a square root, and this is negative, it cannot be a solution, of course. But you will not get it, I think, if you solve it in the right way. Now, the second type of equations that we will study today is equations involve radicals. This is not totally new, by the way. We have seen this before. If you remember, for example, we solve equation like this: 6x to the power 2 over 3 equals to 216. This is involving radicals. There are radicals here in terms of rational expressions. So you can do that. Do you remember how to solve such equation? Isolate. We will isolate this expression alone on one side, and then we will continue. Okay? So the idea almost the same here. Now, by equations involving radicals, we don't, is this equation that involve radical? No, we don't mean these. There's a radical here, but the variable here is not inside the radical. So this is easy, shabab. This is just x squared equals to 4. This is x equals to positive or negative 2. So this is not that we are talking about. We are talking about when you have, for example, here 16 minus x, let's say. So here you have the variable inside the radical. This is what we are talking about here. So we need to have an agreement because before continuing, we need to agree about this. Read our agreement and say I agree or I don't agree, because it is so important. When you solve an equation that involves radical, you must You must. It is not better to check. You must check. It is a must. Keep this in mind. Let's see why. Why we must check? Because let me show you the steps how to solve equations involving radicals. You need in step number 1 to what? To isolate the radical on one, and this is the same idea that we did in B8. In step number 2, and also we did that there, by the way, raise each side of the equation to a power that it is the same as the index of the radical. What is that? This means that if you have square root, both sides to the power 2. If it is third root, to the power 3, and so on. Now, if you still have a radical, repeat step number 1 and step number 2 again. If you are done, go to step number 3. When you have no more radicals. In step number 3, you need to solve the resulting equation. Usually it will be linear or quadratic or polynomial, whatever it is. And step number 4, check. So it is a step, it is one of the steps of solution to check that the answer is true or not. So what you will get here, what you will get from step number 3, they are called proposed solutions, potential solutions, possible solutions. They are not solutions yet until you check. Why you need to check when you square both sides or when you raise both sides to a power, especially when it is even. Look at -1. -1 is not 1. This is true. But look, when you square, what will happen? It will be 1 equals to 1. So when you square both sides, many things could happen. So this is what is called extraneous solutions. When you square both sides, extra solution will be appear. So we will reject them. Just we will take the solution, the real solution that we'll have for the equation. So this is what we have, -1. This is just for you to remember why we need to check. Let's take this example. It is important to look at the equation at the beginning and determine the type. What is the type of this equation? It is equation involve radical. So how to solve it? Isolate the radical, step number 1. So how to isolate? Don't start squaring both sides. No, isolate the radical. So to isolate the radical, what you will do? You will add -1 for both sides. You can do also one thing. You can multiply both sides by what? But no need. You will square both sides, so it will gone when you square both sides. When you square both sides, you will raise both sides to the power what? 2. So this will be 4. You will expand this. Here it is in this step. And the negative, when you square to the power 2, -1 to the power 2 will be 1, and the square root will gone with 2. Why there is no absolute value here? I need to remember, I want you to remember this, Shabab. When you have square root of x all to the power 2, what is the result here? It is x. But when you have square root of x squared, this is what? The absolute value. So keep in mind that x squared to the power half, there is absolute value here. But when you have something like this is x to the power what? A half all to the power 2, there is no absolute value there. Look, they look the same, but here you have x, here you have the absolute value of x. Great. So here we squared both sides. We didn't take the square root of the square. So now don't say take the square root of both sides. If you take the square root of both sides, you will go back. So what you will do? Expand. Our target is to get rid of the radicals. Now expand, combine like terms. Now it is what? Quadratic type. Factor if you can factor. If you cannot factor, go and use the quadratic formula. But we can factor this. Give it, ya shabab, 1 minute. Try. Don't just say from the beginning, oh, I cannot factor. Let me go to the quadratic. It may take more time from you. Factoring is easier if you can factor it. It can be factored. It is 4x plus 1 times x minus 1. Now, 2 factors, the product of them is 0. One of them must be 0. So, or both. So x will be what? -4th. And x is what? 1. So if they ask about the number of solutions, how many solutions we have? These are not solutions yet. These are proposed solutions, possible, potential solutions. So we must check these solutions. We have radical equation. We squared both sides. So we
Create
must
new
check.
solutions.
Whenever you square both sides, you must check. So where to check in this equation? In the original one. In the original one. This is the original one. Check the original one. If you put x equals to -4 in the left-hand side, it is easy. It is -½ Now put it in the right-hand side and check, are they the same? You get the same answer. But look at 1. When you put x equals to 1, what you will get here? If x is 1, this will be what? 1 minus square root of 1, which is 1 minus 1, which is what? And here, it will be 2. 2 is equal to 0. If 2 equals to 0, this will be a solution, but 2 is not a 0. And of course, now 1 is rejected. So we have only one solution. This is the extraneous solution that we obtained when we square both sides. So we have only one solution for this equation. Excellent. Now, the third and the last type in this section is equations of quadratic type. You know what is the equation, the quadratic equation? This one, ax squared plus bx plus c equals to what? To 0. This is quadratic equation. What we want here, we want to find what is what? What is x to solve it. Now, when you have here, instead of x, you have any expression, any algebraic expression instead of x. In this case, it is called what? Of quadratic type. It is similar to, it looks like quadratic type, but originally it is not. But it is just of quadratic type. It is quadratic in W. So when you want to find W, yes, it is quadratic.
Isn't it like
But in fact, W here, it is an expression of x. There is x inside W.
substituted?
We will use the substitution. Now, let's see some examples. It will be, I think, more clear. Let's take this. X to the power 4 minus 8, x to the power 2 plus 8 equals to 0. Is it quadratic?
No,
Why?
because it's the power of 4.
Yes, the quadratic equation, it is a second degree polynomial. This is of degree 4. So clearly it is not a quadratic
You can
equation.
do a trick.
So here you need to have the sense of quadratic. I call it the quadratic sense. I told you about it when we complete the square, the quadratic sense. So add to your 5 senses the sixth one, the quadratic sense. How to feel that there is something quadratic here of quadratic type? You have 3 terms. You have trinomial. First of all, you have trinomial, 3 terms. Then you have something and the square of that thing. So here we have W, this is W, and this is W what? W squared. So here you will replace or substitute x squared by W. You can use U. Usually we prefer to use U or Y. Use any letter other than what? Other than X. If you, because I have noticed some students, they said, let X equal X squared. What is that? Or 0. So this is not a substitution. You are explaining water by water. So defining water by water. This is not the same way, the right way. Use any letter other than X to use a substitution. Okay, so now when you square both sides here, what you will get? X squared equals to x to the power 4. So now you can substitute. Your equation will be like this now. So we started with equation with x. Now we have it with what? With W. Now this is of course quadratic in W. Okay. If the question, ya shabab, was about the sum of the solutions, what will be the answer? Do you remember what I told you before? If you have ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0, the sum of the solutions will be what? Negative b over a. And the product will be c over a. So can we say here that the sum of the solution, or the product of the solution is 8 over 1, which is 8? This will be the sum of what? W's. The product of W's, not the x's, the x values. So this is not right. Be careful about this mistake also. So in this case, what we should do? We should solve it for W. Can you factor?
Yes.
Give me 2 numbers, the product of them is 8 and the sum of them is -8. You cannot. -4 and -4, the sum of them is -8, but the product of them is not 8. Check always, whatever you will think about, check your factoring, is it right or not? So in this case, don't waste your time, go directly to the quadratic formula. When you went to the quadratic formula, you need to simplify. And this is what I told you. I just give you here the final answer. You need to work here. This will be 8, 8 over 2 is 4. And here you need to simplify. It will be square root of 64 minus 32, which is square root of 32, 16 times 2, 4 square root of 2, 4 over 2 will be, this is what you will get at the end. Now, how many solutions? If they ask you about the number of solutions,
Still,
we didn't finish yet. We did solve it, yeah, Muhammad, for W only, for W, not for X. So the question is about what is X, solve it for X, not for W. So what we should do in this case? Substitute back. Go now to the original. So W is what?
X squared.
Replace W by X squared. Now solve it for what? This is basic equation, power equation. How to solve it? Take the square root of both sides. Now what you have here? Absolute value of X equals to the square root of this, which means that X equals positive or negative the square root.
But I have a question.
Yes.
Shouldn't we check if the negative is negative sign? We 4 minus 2 square root of 2. Is it a negative or positive?
Why? What is the problem if it is negative? No problem. If you have quadratic equation, you may have positive or negative solutions.
Yes, but if we take the square root of x squared both sides.
No, you will substitute in the original equation. There is no square root there. Now you will just take the square root of both sides, negative and positive. Now, how many solutions we have? 4. In fact, you will take positive with positive and negative, then negative with positive and negative. So these are the 4 solutions. It is not easy to check, by the way. If you want to check, you need to square and then square again to check the original solution. So we didn't square both sides here. So it is not a must to check. If you are sure about your steps, it is enough. It is better to check, but it is not a must. What I'd like to mention here is about what? I forgot, by the way. Let's go to the next example. If I remember, I will tell you about it. Now, I remember what I want to say. It is expected to have 4 solutions here. Why? Because we will study in chapter 3, inshallah, the fundamental theorem of algebra. The fundamental theorem of algebra says that any polynomial of degree n, it has n solutions. They might be repeated. Some of them might be repeated. Some of them, they will be equal to each other. Some of them, they might be real or complex. They might be all complex solutions, okay? So it is expected to have 4 solutions. Now, let's see if the quadratic sense start working with you or not. Do you have this sense or not yet? Yes. So this is what? This is something, and this is the same thing, what? Squared. So this is W squared minus 6W plus 8 equals to what? To 0. Now this is quadratic, or this is of quadratic type. Now this is quadratic in W. It is of quadratic type in X. Again, you need to solve it for W. You can factor here. W is 2, W is 4. And now what is W?
We can
Substitute back. W is 1 plus 1 over X. Solve it for what? For X now. Add 1 for both sides. This is what we have. Now multiply by X. So, but X here cannot be 0. It is clearly cannot be 0 from the beginning because it is in the denominator. So X equal to 0 is not a solution. Take the reciprocal, by the way, it is easier. Cross multiply, whatever you can do. X is third and what? And 1. And if they ask about the sum of the solutions, the number of solutions, can we decide now? Did we square both sides?
No.
Do we have rational equation and the denominator will be 0? So I think it's okay. So these are the solutions. Is there another way? Do you have another idea to solve this question or to solve this equation? Yes. No, it is easier.
By the formula.
Which formula?
Quadratic.
No, this is, no, factoring is easier. Believe me, factoring is easier. No, I mean from the beginning. Let me go back. Forget about quadratic type.
Simplify. Expand.
Expand. So it will be 1 plus 2 over x plus 1 over x squared. Is that right? Minus 6 over x plus 8 equal to 0. It is, by the way, it is easier. It is not that difficult. Now combine the like terms. You have 1 over x squared. 2 minus 6 over x, it is negative 4 over x. 1 minus 6 is negative 5. Negative 5 plus 8 plus 3 equals to what? To 0. Multiply both sides by the LCD, which is x squared. So what you will get? 1 minus 4x plus 3x squared, which is equals to 0, provided that x is not what? 0. And it is clear from the beginning that x is not 0. Okay? Now, it is not in the standard form, by the way. Write it in the standard form. Usually we can solve it when it is like this, but you can solve it when it is like that. It is the same. Look here, what we will have can factor? 3x times x, and 1 is 1 times 1, and both of them are what? Both of them are negative. Here we are, check before going to the next step. Is it okay? So this means that this is 0, or x minus 1 is 0. So x is 1, or x is what? Third. Are they the same? Do you remember? The same. And I believe this is easier. So always, ya shabab, there is another way. In every aspect in your life, there is another way. Is it better? Is it shorter? Is it faster? This is the question. Is it correct also?
I should just check if I square or
Yes. When you have rational equation, it is better to check. When you have radical equation, you must check. Always, when you square both sides, you have to check. Okay, how to solve this equation? Any idea?
Substitute, it's a type of quadratic.
Is it quadratic?
Yes, we substitute x to the power of third.
Substitute by what you.
I'm so happy you have the quadratic sense. Yes, it is of quadratic type. Why? You have 3 terms. You have trinomial. You have something here. So what is w? What is w squared?
X to the power of 6.
X to the power third can be w. If this is, it will be all to the power 2. It will be x to the power 2 over 3. So it is not there. So this is not w. It is 1 over 6. So this is 1 over 6. So it is 2 over 6, which is what? Which is there. Which is there. Here it is. So this is w squared plus w minus 2 equals to 0. It is of quadratic type. You can use instead of w any letter other than x, of course. Here we are. We will have a quadratic equation in w of quadratic type in x. We can factor.
Yes. W minus 2, w plus 2, w.
So w equals to 1 or w equals to negative 2, which means that x to the power 1 over 6 is 1, or x to the power 1 over 6 is negative 2. What is x to the power 1 over 6 equals to 1? This, what is x? 1 or positive or negative 1? Positive 1 or negative? Let's remember, ya shabab. Now what we will do, we will raise both sides to the power what? To the power 6. So this is clearly 1 to the power 6 is 1. Here we have what? X or the absolute value of x? Sure? Yes, exactly. This is the square root of x all to the power, the 6th root of x all to the power 6. And this is of course positive. Otherwise, this radical does not exist at all. So here we have x. You are right. And similarly, here you will raise both sides to the power what? 6, and you will get x equals to what? 46. 64. It is 64. Right. So what is the sum of the solutions? 65. The number of solutions? 2. You will get 0 in this question if you answer like this. Why we need to check? Now this is my question. Because we squared not once, not twice, 3 times. We raised both sides to the power 6. So we squared and squared and squared. So we must check and check and check. When you have radical equation, it is better. Keep it this in mind. We have agreed. Do you remember the agreement that we have agreed about? Whenever we have radical equation, we must check. Especially, of course, when you square both sides anyway. By the way, Shabab, I can expect which one is rejected. This one is rejected.
One is correct.
One is correct. You can check it. Not before checking. This is not possible, by the way, Shabab. This expression is not valid. Square root of x, the sixth root of x equals to negative? No, we have agreed that this means the principal part, what is coming out here is positive, what is inside here is positive. If n is what? If n is even. So it was clear from the beginning. But we went with it and we check. Let's check. Here it is. The check is here. Look what will happen if you check. If it is 1, it is clear. 1 plus 1, 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. So checked. Now let's put x equals to 64. What you will get? 64 to the power third, which is what? 64 to the power sixth, 2. 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 minus 2 is 4. But the right hand side is 0. If 4 is equals to 0, this will be a solution, but they are not. So we have only one solution, which is what? X equals to 1.
And if 64 were a solution, negative 64 would be a solution as well.
Who said that?
If it was a solution, because it's both x is.
No, we didn't say that. You are mixing between what we did yesterday. Do you remember? We said yesterday if one of the solutions complex, if you have complex solutions, then if a plus bi is a solution, then a minus bi will be a solution, the conjugate. But
if every x was to the power 2, then it would be negative as well.
I don't think so. Okay, how to solve this, ya Shabab? This equation, we have x to the power 3 plus 8. We can move this to the right hand side. This is what we did in P8. This is kind of power equation. So you will take the cubic root of both sides. What you will get? Negative 2. This is the real solution. There are still two solutions. Where they are? So if they ask you about the reals, find the real solutions, this is what you should do. But if they said solve it, find all the solutions, what you should do? Factor. Solve it as a polynomial equation. So look what you should do. Factor it as what? Sum of cubes. Now you have two factors. The product of them is what? 0. So this means that x plus 2 is 0 or x squared minus 2x plus 4 is 0. Don't, from here it is x equals to what? Negative 2. This is the one that we obtained, the real solution. Now this one, Shabab, always the trinomial that comes out from the sum of cubes or the difference of cubes, it is always prime. Don't try to factor it. It is always prime polynomial. So just go and use what? The quadratic formula. Unless you have expressions that can be simplified later. I'm talking about when you have it in terms of x only. So now solve it, simplify. This is what you will get at the end, two complex solutions. So this equation has 3 solutions, negative 2, and 1 plus I squared 3, 1 minus I squared 3. If you cube this, if you multiply one of them by itself 3 times, you will get negative 8. Check that.
So I can't write 1 plus or negative square of minus 3 instead of saying 3.
It is 1I squared 3. What? It is 1 plus square root of negative 3.
So can I say that or?
You can say that. They are the same, but usually we use this, of course. It will be easier to deal with the I. Always when you have negative radicals, write them with I. These are a Shabab kind of rational equations. You know how to solve them by multiplying by what? By the LCD. Be careful about the zeros of the denominator. Many cases can happen here. We may have no solution. We may have some of them solutions. It might be always true. So we have what is called identity. We called also have contradiction. These are radical of involving radicals. So what you should do in such equations? Isolate, then square both sides. But let me give you an example with 2 radicals. So we have here two radicals. What should we do at the first step? Isolate one of them. You cannot isolate both of them at the same time. So isolate one of them, then what? Then square. So this is what we will do. Square both sides. Here, because we have two radicals, we will still have one of them.
Yeah.
When you square both sides, this will gone, but this one will be the first one multiplied by the double of the product plus the square of the second one. And we still have a radical here. What to do?
Isolated.
Isolate it again, simplify, move all the terms to the other side, then square. You can, Shabab, read the description here. If the steps are not clear for you, the description is here on the right. Now you will have a polynomial equation. In fact, here it is quadratic equation. Solve it, find x, and you must check, double check. And not when you check, don't expect that always they will be not solutions, both will be solution, or one is a solution, one is not. Everything could happen. Here we have, of course, both of them are correct. Both of them are solutions.
So it could be there is no solution.
Yes, why not?
Is it possible to have a solution not the equation?
Yes, we did obtain
No, I mean, not have a solution.
yes, equation with no solution. Yes, we will see. We will have one like in the recitation, I think.
So you mean not solution or not real solution?
No, we are talking now, after studying now the complex solutions, we are talking about all solutions, complex or real. By the way, when we say complex, real are included. When we say complex numbers, the real numbers are complex numbers. So, unless it is mentioned, if he asks, like here, look, find all real, he is looking for real only. But when he said find all solutions, like solve, like here, solve the equation. Like here, this is a recitation exercise. Do we need to solve it, or it is similar to example number 5? This is the same example that we solved. Yes. Also this one, it is rational. You will multiply by the LCD, or you can, of course, solve it without that. This is similar to solved exercise number 2B. It has no solution, by the way. No solution at all. Not only no real solutions. We have time. I think we have time to practice by solving this. Try to solve this, Shabab. During that, I will take the attendance. So let's check the solution. It is -4. Okay, how to obtain this solution? You can do it in two different ways. The first way is to use your quadratic sense. So what do we have here? We have here x over x plus 2 all to the power 2 minus 4x over x plus 2 plus 4 equals to what? To 0, which will be what? W squared minus 4w plus 4 equals to what? To 0. And this is what? Perfect square. This is w minus 2 all squared equals to 0. So take the square root of both sides. This will be w minus 2 equals to positive or negative 0, which is 0. And this means that w is what? Is 2. What is w? You should mention here what is w. W is what? X over x plus 2. Of course, from the beginning, x cannot be negative 2. So now we have x over x plus 2 equals to 2. Multiply both sides by what? By the LCD, which is what? X plus 2. So you will get what? 2x plus 4. Is that right? Now add negative x for both sides. Add negative 4 for both sides. X equals to negative. Good. What is the another way? The other way is to do what? To do expanding from the beginning. It will be x squared over x plus 2 all squared. Don't expand this one. It is factored. Keep it factored. Equals to 4x over x plus 2 minus 4. Multiply both sides by the LCD, which is x plus 2. So what you will get? X plus 2 all squared. This is the LCD. Now you will get what? X squared equals to what? 4x multiplied by x plus 2. One of them will be cancelled with the one in the denominator. Minus 4 multiplied by x plus 2 all. It looks like this will be longer, a little bit longer, but I think the first method is better. Now, what you can do here, expand. Be careful when you expand. 8x. Here it will be minus. Let's expand and distribute at the same time. Don't do that if you are not sure. So here we are. And you can continue, I think. It's not difficult. 4x squared plus 8x minus 4x squared minus 16x minus 16. So these will be cancelled. And what you will get here?
Minus 8
X squared plus 8 x plus 16 equals to what? Which is x plus 4. Again, we have perfect square, which implies that x is what? Negative 4. Okay, do we have to check here? It is better to check, but it is not a must here. We didn't square both sides. The only need here to check if you get negative what? Negative 2. You have to be careful. You should reject here x equals negative 2 if you obtain it as a solution. Okay. Now, how to solve this?
No, square both sides.
See solved exercise number 4. This is the same idea. You can solve it just here. You need to isolate. It is already isolated. Just square both sides, then isolate the remaining one. The remaining one, isolate it again and square again, and you must check. Don't forget that. Thank you guys, and see you inshallah.